But first, there is big news developing today. Earlier today, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said that Israel and the Palestinians have once again agreed to resume stalled peace talks in Washington next month. Here's part of Secretary Clinton's announcement.
After proximity talks and consultations with both sides, on behalf of the United States government, I've invited Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Abbas to meet on September 2nd in Washington, D.C., to relaunch direct negotiations to resolve all final status issues, which we believe can be completed within 1 year.
She said within 1 year. So what led to this potential breakthrough, and what about the timing of the announcement today suddenly from the State Department? We want to bring in now White House Correspondent Mark Knoller. He's with the president, who's on vacation in Martha's Vineyard. Mark, this kind of came out of the blue to most of us this morning. What's behind this today?
Well, you'll recall that in recent months, President Obama has had meetings with President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority, with Prime Minister Netanyahu. They met at the White House last month. The president felt that from those talks there was an opportunity to move from the proximity talks, the indirect talks in which Mideast Special Envoy George Mitchell was going back and forth between Israel and the Palestinians, and have direct talks. In an interview last month, President Obama was asked whether he thought that a peace agreement could be reached between Israel and the Palestinians. He said he thinks so, but he believed that there was a fairly narrow window of opportunity in which to get it done, and that window of opportunity begins September 2nd in Washington.
Mark, this is Juan Zarate. A question. One of the issues that has arisen is what President Abbas gets out of agreeing to the direct talks. Is there any indication that there's already a deal made with respect to settlement freeze or the extension of that from Israel, which has been a sticking point?
Well, there's no indication that I'm aware of any preordained deals. The United States had all it could do to get Abu Mazen, or President Abbas, as he is called, to agree to come to these talks without preconditions. All along he has been talking about preconditions, end to the settlement activity by Israel in the West Bank. So what the United States feels, and what President Obama regards President Abbas as a moderate, certainly as a moderate compared to the Hamas officials who are running the Gaza Strip. And the president believes that Abbas may be in a position and may be willing to make concessions that will bring about agreement on the final status issues that have eluded agreement for 20 years.
Mark, the one political point that kind of occurred to me this morning is this administration has made bold promises in the past. They've set deadlines for themselves in the past. And while this isn't a deadline, both Secretary Clinton and Special Emissary George Mitchell said this morning they're hoping to get something done within a year. Has, again, the administration put themselves on the spot here?
Well, you know what? In negotiations of this type, unless you set a deadline and work for it, you're probably not going to get anything done. Secretary Clinton's husband brought the Israeli and Palestinian leaders to Camp David for 3 weeks. He got them within spitting distance of an agreement, but it never happened. The Middle East has been elusive about reaching agreement, and what President Obama is talking about are the most difficult, called final status issues, things like the future of Jerusalem and the right of return of Palestinians. And will it be easy? Absolutely not. Would anybody bet money that it's going to be agreed to within a year? You'd be foolish to do so. But unless you try, you're definitely not going to get anywhere. And President Obama certainly wants to be seen trying.
And one last point, Mark, I couldn't miss this part. As this is playing out at the State Department, we saw pictures from the Vineyard where you are of President Obama out at a bookstore. I mean, it looks like the administration took some pains to say he's not on the job per se doing this today. He's out on vacation. Was that deliberate?
Well, it was certainly deliberate. It wasn't done, without consultations with the White House, Secretary Clinton said she was inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas to the talks, but she also made a point of saying that on the eve of the talks, September 1st, President Obama would have direct face-to-face negotiations with Abbas, with Netanyahu, and also with Egypt's President Mubarak and Jordan's King Abdullah, and that he would host them at a dinner that night at the White House in advance of the start of trilateral talks with the Israeli, Palestinian, and leaders and Secretary of State Clinton. So he will certainly play a role on this. He's certainly putting his prestige on this, but he was content to let Secretary of State Clinton make the announcement.
All right. Well, Mark Knoller, thanks very much for joining us from Martha's Vineyard. It's always a working vacation when the president goes on vacation.
Well, the White House goes to great lengths, as have previous White Houses, to make the case that no president is ever really on vacation, that every president, the job follows them no matter where they are, and that's certainly true. And the president here in Martha's Vineyard has top aides, including Homeland Security Advisor John Brennan, who delivers and gives the president a daily intelligence and national security briefing while he's on vacation.
All right. Well, Mark, I hope you get a little bit of downtime. Thanks for joining us today on Unplugged.
You bet, Bob. But remember, reporters are not on vacation. We're covering a president on vacation.
Exactly. I'll make sure that's reflected on the timesheet.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, just quickly, I mean, the thing about saying within a year, Mark has a point. If you don't put a bar out there, then there's nothing to meet.
That's right. But we've seen deadlines come and go before in the Middle East peace process, unfortunately. President Bush had it happen to him in terms of the Annapolis process he tried to push at the end of his administration. We've seen it with President Clinton down to the wire at the end of his administration. But what's interesting about the Obama administration, they said from the get-go, we're going to try to push this from the start of the term. And they're going to try here. And I think they should be commended for it. And hopefully we'll see some progress.